So you know what? It is 7 p.m. And with that, quite a segue. Talk about humble. Welcome to New York Empire Baseball. Hustle at home. New York Empire experts. Each week or 2 weeks, we'll be bringing you experts from around the world of youth sports, certainly around the Empire world, from the athletic side of things, and tonight to the academic athletic side of things. And next week, just to give a little plug and foreshadowing to the very top of the medical world as it relates to youth sports. I'm not going to let any more of that cat out of the bag, but the next 2 weeks are going to be extraordinary. Yeah. I mean, the best of the best. And speaking of the best, let's jump right in and kick this off. The truth is, before we even started, to say that I was humbled and misty-eyed and emotional would already be an understatement. For the folks that are already on the call, what you're looking at right now is the best of the best. People who worked harder than hard, loved every moment of the hard work, and did it because they loved what they were doing, not because there was necessarily a goal in mind. And I'm only talking about our host. I haven't even gotten to our panelists. Our very special co-host and guest is Lisa Daniels. She's an Emmy award-winning journalist, a mother of 5, 4 of whom are New York Empire Baseball alum or ball players. We're very, very proud of that fact. Lisa, I choked up already. I may even be starstruck. Thank you for being here with us.
I'm glad you said that it was about the host and not but the host. That's what I was afraid you were going to say. But no, I'm so, thank you for asking me to do this. You know, it's such a pleasure to be here. And as you know, having these 4 and soon to be 5 budding athletes, this topic is so important to me. And I can learn so much as a mom because I've seen firsthand it's very hard to balance school and sports. So I'm hoping to get some tips too. And what a panel to give me those tips. Let's meet them.
It really is. I mean, I'm going to start off with some brief introductions, and I'm not going to be embarrassed if the tears start to flow.
No.
So Sydney Ginsberg is with us. She graduated from Rye Country Day in 2014 and laughed at me this week and said, "I'm so old." And I'm like, "Sydney, you no, it's not close." And she then went on to graduate from Yale in 2018. You talk about playing a very high level of softball. From the time she was 11 years old, she was already playing at the highest levels of competitive teenage softball. She was playing with 18-year-olds. Sid, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to overstate, but I believe when you were 14, you were playing 18U softball. When you were in Central Park training with me, you were told by dozens of people that the Yankees needed you, and that's not an exaggeration. And the truth is, and I'm going to be very blunt here, in spite of being physical stature was not typical of a superstar softball player or baseball player, right? All of 5'4" or 5'5", at the time, 110 pounds max. You were far bigger in joy and passion and intensity than your stature. And it carried you along with the most incredible work ethic maybe I've ever seen, all the way to the highest level of college softball. So to say that we are thrilled to have you here, to say that we are thrilled to have had you train with us and have had you as a coach for younger children at New York Empire Baseball, it's an understatement. So thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Jordan.
Rob Berk. Wow. Rob Berk's the only player in history of the Empire to be named captain. We don't name captains, ever. Rob wasn't captain of a team. He was captain of all of our teams. 500 players at the time. I'm going to tell you a story about Rob before we kick off, and then I'll let him take over. When Rob tried out at 9 years old, you had to know, Rob, I wasn't going to leave this alone. When Rob tried out at 9 years old, he did not hit one fair ball in his tryout. Not one. And Coach Bernard and I looked at each other when he walked away from us and said, "There's something special about this boy." Boy, oh boy, did we know what we were talking about. You talk about understatements. I'm full of them tonight. If that's a failed tryout, wow. Welcome to the world of success, Robert Berk. I'll also point out, Rob was the second player ever named to the New York Empire Baseball Hall of Fame. He was also at 13 years old, as many of you already know, our senior assistant coach, managing an entire staff of other assistant coaches as old as 18 years old. He carved out that position for himself, and after the next hour, you'll understand exactly how and why. So this is nothing new. Rob, absolutely thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Bobby Shepetin. Bobby, I'm going to share the reality of it all. And you can unmute yourself because you're going to have to take over when the tears start again. When Bobby was 12 years old, he came to New York Empire Baseball. His work ethic, like everybody else here, was exceptional, extraordinary, exemplary. But he wasn't a starter on the team. And that problem, for lack of a better word, persisted for years. So much so that Bobby joined our summer teams year after year after year. And I had to call his father every year to say, Seth, are you sure that you want to sign Bobby up? The likelihood of him getting playing time in his 14U summer is low. The likelihood of him getting playing time in his 15U summer is low. And we'll get into this a little later, but Bobby's father said, well, I'll talk to Bobby. And that alone spoke volumes about the family in which Bobby grew up. And Seth called me not an hour later and said, Bobby wants to be there and he's willing to work for whatever he gets. And he's thrilled to just be on the team. Well, Bobby was a little overweight at that time. And Bobby decided one day, and I don't know, I never asked you, Bobby, what the turning point was. Maybe it'll come out tonight. Bobby decided to get in shape. And when I tell you there was sweat on the floor of the gym day after day, week after week, until Bobby was not only in shape, but a specimen for a ball player. And then Bobby decided to take it a step further. He called me up one day in January and said, Coach, I need to train. And as you know, I switched schools. I go to Packer now. It's in Brooklyn. Can you train me before school? I said, Bobby, I will do anything for you because of your work ethic. I know that I need to match that. He said, great, thanks. Can you do 6 a.m.? I said, when do you want to start? He said, tomorrow. I said, sure. My car pulled up at 5:51. It was 27 degrees. I remember that very clearly because I looked at my clock on my car and it has the little thermometer. It said 27 and Bobby was in training shorts and flip-flops and had his catcher's gear. He had walked in the snow in shorts in 27-degree weather from 74th Street to 60th Street so he could be on time to train. 2 hours later, Bobby called me up and said, I just want to let you know I got to school on time because that was prerequisite for me to train him in the morning. He had to be early for school. He said, I even had time for my egg sandwich. Bobby, your work ethic took you to 2 all-Ivy catching notoriety. You're now a college catcher, having been the guy who sat on a bench for how many years. So, Bobby, welcome. Thanks for being on the call. I'll backtrack for a moment. Rob Berk was a Hunter graduate in 2016, Hamilton graduate in 20. Bobby graduated Packer in 17, and Macalester, he'll graduate next year. And that brings us to Devin Milberg, a graduate of Dalton in 2019. If after his gap year he decides that the MLB can wait, he'll head to Dartmouth, where he'll likely graduate in 2024, although knowing Devin, he'll graduate within a year. I'll tell you a very quick story for those of you who didn't read it already. A couple of years ago, Devin Milberg was throwing 77, 78, 79 miles an hour. He came in for a 3D motion analysis with me at NYU. And I joked at him. He said, how did I do? And I'm looking at this 3D analysis. And I said, it was terrible, Devin, terrible. And every other child I know would have looked and said, oh, my goodness, this is awful. What do I do? And he looked at me and he said, that's great, coach. And I knew where he was going with it. I said, why is that? He said, because if I'm terrible and I can throw 79, imagine how hard I'll throw when I'm not terrible. And I knew right then and there that Devin, to say the sky's the limit is an insult. Devin took himself to 93 miles an hour. His work ethic is also, I'd say, second to none, but in current company, Devin, how about we're all on the same level at this point? In addition to that, by the time he was in junior year, he had already started his own business, and it was a very admirable one. We can talk more about that later. So let's see. I believe the words were, that's a major league curveball, a 93-mile-an-hour fastball, your own business, and you've yet to get to college. So with all of that, Devin, welcome. Thank you for being here. I am thrilled to have all of you here. And with that, Lisa, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much for those wonderful introductions. And Jordan, this is your time to get a tissue, because we know that there are going to be more tears. No, but here's what we're hoping to do in the next hour. Jordan and I prepared, we brainstormed some questions that we think are what people probably wanted to ask. And parents and students, you can use the Q&A box, and while we're hearing the answers, you can give your own questions, anything that you want. Nothing is off limits. So this is your opportunity to use this all-star panel. I mean, this is where you get the good stuff. And just give us your questions, and then hopefully we'll get to answer as many as we can. But let's get the ball rolling. Let's ask each of the panelists, just give us a brief introduction in terms of what your path was. You can start from middle school or high school and tell us what that path entailed and where you are now. So Sydney, let's start with you.
Yeah, of course. And thank you, everyone. And thank you, Jordan, for having me. It's so great to be on this with all of you. But just by way of background, I grew up in New York City. I was born and raised there. I went to Horace Mann up until 10th grade, which is when I transferred to Rye Country Day. I was a two-sport athlete at Rye Country Day. I played squash and softball. I started playing softball when I was 8 years old, just little league softball in New York City. And then by the time I got to 8th grade, I realized that, hey, I really love softball, and maybe this is something I want to do in college. Sorry, that's my dog running in the background. But so I decided to try out for travel teams. I joined a travel team in upstate New York, Yorktown, New York, drove an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to practice. And from there, I was recruited to Yale for softball. I played all 4 years there. I was the starting center fielder. I was a political science major at Yale. Ever since graduating in 2018, I moved back to New York City, and I've been working as an analyst in the investment bank at Credit Suisse. Empire and Jordan have been a huge part of my journey. I've known Jordan since I was probably, I don't know, in 5th grade, maybe even earlier than that. And he's always been a really close friend to me and my family, and a great mentor to me. And I've been able to coach at Empire for several summers throughout high school and college, and I can't say enough great things about Empire and Jordan.
Oh, that's great. Well, I've got a million questions for you, but let's hear from Bobby. Bobby, can you give us the rundown on where you came from and where you are now?
Yeah, so I grew up in New York City on the Upper West Side, went to school kind of in the neighborhood until 8th grade, and then kind of met Jordan and Empire right around that time. And it was kind of at that same time when I went to high school in Brooklyn at Packer Collegiate Institute. And kind of growing up, I always played sports, always played basketball, always played baseball. And I don't know if Jordan remembers, but there was a day when we had a state championship game for basketball. And in the morning, I hit with Jordan, and then we had the school day, and then we had a state championship game. So that was like kind of just the fun thing. But I think playing 2 sports growing up is a great preparation for the time commitment that you have to put in at maybe the next level, and kind of understanding different kind of, team dynamics, understanding yourself, athleticism, and kind of within all of that, going to rigorous schools, doing my best in school, not maybe always getting the best grades in high school, but, definitely the lessons that I learned playing sports and trying to see, improvements in my athleticism abilities, communication on the field has translated off the field into, just about every, way I can think about in life. So I think that there's a big credit to athletics growing up in New York City, playing multiple sports, and then being in a position today where, almost done with college, hopefully, and kind of ready to get into the world a little.
That's great. And we're going to come back to that idea of doing multiple sports and whether it's good or not. And obviously you think it's been incredibly beneficial. But Robert, let's get to you, and congratulations. I know you just graduated from Hamilton days ago, right?
Yeah, just last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So I also grew up in New York City. I went to Hunter College High School all the way from pre-K through 12th grade. While I was there, I played soccer, basketball, and baseball. And Jordan was actually my coach during my freshman year on the baseball team there, in addition to Empire when I started. I was with Jordan since I was 9. I went to Hamilton College. At Hamilton, I was tried out for the baseball team freshman year. Didn't make the team, practiced with the team throughout the year. Came back sophomore year, was ready to try out again, and then ultimately decided to step away from baseball in a playing way. While in college, I started 2 businesses. I got much more interested in entrepreneurship and other things. The first one, Solve It, is a social media and digital branding company. And then Apprentice, which launched last year, is a platform that connects college students to entrepreneurs. And then last Sunday, when I graduated, I published a book, Why Wait? It kind of shares my journey through college and starting a business and kind of balancing all of that.
So basically, you're a slacker.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. I'm tired even hearing that list. How do you do that?
That's fun.
It's incredible. All right, Devin, you're up.
Hi, my name's Devin Milberg. Thank you, Jordan, for the kind introduction. So I grew up on the Upper West Side in New York City. I went to school on the Upper West Side K through 5, and then switched to Dalton School on the Upper East Side for 6 through 12. I started playing baseball when I was probably 5, just T-ball league. I joined Empire when I think I was 10 or 11. And that was a huge part of my baseball journey. Jordan's coaching method specifically, which I can speak to more later on, is based on explaining to you what he's doing and what he's thinking. And that is something that really spoke to me and something that connected with me and was a big part of my, I think, the success that I've had. And so school was a big job in terms of balancing school life and academic life with the sports life. Like Bobby, I played multiple sports up till high school, but beginning in high school, I focused mainly on baseball. I ran an entrepreneurial club in high school, and I might speak more to this later, but I had an injury that kept me off the field my junior year, which was a big hurdle. But after that, I had a successful senior year, a really fun senior year. And then took a gap year, which I think is also something I'll speak more to in the future. And I'm looking forward to college next year.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much for the backgrounds, guys. Jordan, you want to get the ball rolling?
I do.
Okay.
Right from that, and I'll even interrupt myself. I know that Devin in the next 45 minutes or an hour is going to point out how when he was 10, 11, and 12, I had him on the bench so much that maybe he liked hearing what I had to say. But I hope, Devin, that was part of the driver for getting you where you are, because, you know, I didn't believe in Devin year 1.
So let me get that argument straight. Because you were so mean, that accounts for Devin's success.
I don't think Devin will say I was mean. I think he'll say
tough.
I don't even think he'll say I was tough. I think he'll say I sat on the bench more than I should have. And even when I earned a spot, Jordan still didn't recognize that. Devin, you know, I'm going to go off script here. Was that initial challenge of being told, in some sense, right, without hearing the words, "you're not good enough," was that a motivator for you?
Yeah, for sure. It was a motivator for me. It's something that I think has been a driver for me. I was very small, I'd say, up until right around my sophomore year of high school. So that's something that I heard a lot. And, you know, I do think that it was a driver. I've been lucky enough that the environments, Jordan included, have said that in a constructive way, but definitely in a way that's driven me, and in a way that has given me a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like, I've got something to prove. You know, it's not something that you want, but it's something that I think in the long run has been beneficial.
That's fantastic. Anybody else feel like they had a moment of failure that then they turned into the driver and the motivator for the hard work? Love it. Nobody here has failed.
No failures here, Jordan. Look elsewhere.
It was the fall season when I think I was in sixth or seventh grade, and I was really not playing well. And I went up to Jordan, and I pretty much took myself off the team completely. I said that I was a waste of a roster spot. Other people deserve to be playing instead of me. There are better people that could have been on the team instead of me. And I took myself off the team for, it was about a total of a month. We had practice at 7 a.m. every Saturday. And even though I wasn't going to practice, I would wake up at 6:30, like I was going to go to practice, and would just kind of lay in bed because I was so used to going to practice. And I missed the experience. I missed like the struggle of not being the best and striking out and not being able to throw people out and all of those things, enough that I called Jordan back about a month later and asked if I could rejoin the team. I kind of didn't care what my role would be, but I wanted to be at practice, at least, and see where things went. I think that moment for me really just how much I love the game, how much I love playing, the teammates, the atmosphere, that like the actual performance almost became secondary to the process and kind of being there. So that's definitely a big moment for me.
That's actually a very unusual thing, though, to take yourself off the team. I'm just curious, like, what motivated you to do it? Was it teammates that said something, or is it really just from yourself?
No one said anything to me or like directly. I mean, we were all a super close team. We had played with each other for like a couple years at that point already. It was just how I felt, and I wanted what was best for the team. And I felt like I was detrimental to the team. And so it was a really emotional decision, emotional first phone call, probably more emotional second phone call when I wanted to come back. First tournament back, like it was all really intense. But it was just kind of something that I felt like I could help the team by not being there, which was probably the hardest part about it.
And if you want to know what leadership is and how a player that's so special can impact a coach in an organization, I still remember what my response was to Rob when he said, I want to rejoin the team. I said, Rob, we never took you off the roster.
Oh.
Thank you.
So, you know, I want to go back to what a bunch of folks touched on, especially Sid. I mean, you said, you know, you had so many different things going on. And I remember very specifically bat and bar mitzvahs. And as legend has it, you would show up with the eye black still on late to bar and bat mitzvah. So how did you manage all the competing for like grades, friends, sports? How do you manage all of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely really, really tough. But in a lot of ways, I kind of credit softball because it really forced me to be disciplined about how I spent my time. And it really planned out my time for me. And of course, there were sacrifices I had to make for it, but I really loved it. And I think that was an important lesson for me too, because it kind of proved to myself that I wouldn't be willing to, you know, sacrifice all these things that I had to. And you know, when all of my friends were going to these parties or getting together on weekends and I was traveling to tournaments all around the country, I wouldn't have been willing to do that if I didn't really love it and if I didn't really want to succeed in it. And so I think that was that's how I sort of, you know, that's what I sort of learned about myself from it. But I also, as I started saying, I think it really, especially in college, because being, you know, it's a really demanding schedule playing on a Division I team. Even if it is an Ivy, it's a really intense schedule. And you know, it planned out my time for me. I knew exactly what time I had outside of softball to dedicate towards school and to dedicate towards friends and every other activity I wanted to get involved in on campus. And I think that taught me a lot of lessons about myself, and I think it taught me a lot of really important life lessons that I've been able to carry into my job now.
And I'm just curious, Sydney, now that you have a real job, you know, you graduated from college, any moments where you regret that you just couldn't go to a bat mitzvah, hang out with your friends, see a movie?
Not really. And I think mostly because my teammates have really always been my best friends. You know, throughout travel ball and then in college, we were a family. And I think that was one, because we spent so much time together and we loved spending time together, but also because we all got it. You know, we were all going through the same thing. We all had to figure out how to manage our time. And I think that no one else on campus really understood. And my teammates are my best friends, and they still are and forever will be.
Oh, that's great. Bobby, I want to include you too. I have a question about the role of a parent. And this is something that I struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of parents that are listening. It's confusing because we want to support our kids, but we also don't want to interfere. So if you don't mind sharing a personal viewpoint, how much did your parents support you? And really, what is the ideal role that you see parents having?
Yeah, so I think that the parent in youth sports has been kind of romanticized in a lot of different ways, where it's like you have the screaming parent, you have the cookie mom parent, there's like a whole different ways. But I think really the best way, and I think that my parents did a great job of this, was kind of, what is it that I want to do and what's important to me, and how can we kind of foster that and develop that? So I think, I don't know uniquely, but I think people on this panel and people that play team sports in general, what I love doing is being part of a team. And I think there's no better way that I've found throughout my life, or no teams that I've enjoyed more than the teams that I've been in with athletics. So kind of doing whatever it takes to kind of maintain not only the status, but a way to contribute, is kind of a way that kind of my parents were like, okay, let's do what you want to have done in the future. And, what you want to do to get to where you want to be, that's, we'll support you and we'll help develop that. So in college, I kind of had a unique situation where I go to school in Minnesota at Macalester College. And when I came in as a freshman, I worked very hard to kind of get into school and be able to kind of continue playing baseball. But the commitment was never to, the commitment is to me, of course, to work hard, but you're not working hard for yourself. You're working hard for the 35 other people around you, right? Bobby's not in the bullpen. I'm working on catching the low pitch and receiving it, because if I'm in the bullpen in a crunch time situation, we have 4 outs left in a conference game, we can sweep, and I have to be able to catch the low pitch so our pitcher goes into the game and feels comfortable commanding the strike zone. So it's like there's a commitment way bigger beyond yourself, which is something that I kind of realized throughout team sports growing up. And I think that, for parents to encourage that, and kind of, it's just a commitment to yourself, and your commitment is to the people around you. And, the best relationships that I have built have been through, my friends from growing up. I keep in touch with Berk, and I keep in touch with Max a lot. We played baseball all throughout childhood together. It's not like that with all my high school friends. There's just a fundamental difference.
Right.
And so I think that having parents to support whatever the passions are, and in sports especially, and kind of understanding your place within something bigger than yourself.
And can I just ask you, Robert, really quickly, when you took yourself off the team, what role did your parents play, if any, to encourage you to get back on?
They wanted me to do what I wanted to do, which I really appreciate and grateful for them doing. I think if I put myself in my parents' shoes, we actually haven't had a lengthy discussion about it, but I think they're probably didn't want me to take myself off the team, because they also were friends with all the parents on the team, and that's what our weekends really were. But I really appreciate that they kind of gave me the space to decide what I wanted to do. And the second that I said I wanted to come back, they were fully supportive of that.
Great.
That really brings me to something. It sounds like Sid and you all have tied the experience on the field and even off the field to life, right? And baseball and softball is such an incredible metaphor, because you can't control the outcomes, right? You can only work hard, and if you work hard and you do the right thing, on average, good things will happen. And with that, I wonder, what lessons did you learn either through the process or on the field as an athlete that have served you off the field? Devin, you want to jump in on this? Because I know you've had an early start in the real world.
Well, I think a huge part of baseball is that it is intrinsically a game of failure. A player is incredibly successful if they get on base a third of the time. And so one of the biggest things in baseball that is applicable to life in general is to focus not on the results, as Jordan said, but rather on the process. And I think that that's also a big thing that parents, especially at a young age, play a critical role in. If they point out the process rather than the result, it really changes the way that you frame the game. And then when you take that lesson and apply it to life, it changes your outlook. And I think that played a big role for me, both in school and on the field, is trying to look at the way that you prepare for something as more important than what actually happens.
So just to be specific, so as a parent, I would emphasize to my child, wow, I really love the effort that you put in and didn't give up, instead of saying great home run.
Right. I think that's an interesting trap that a lot of parents fall into is, you hear all of the cautioning against rebuking failure, like, instead of saying bad job, you went 0 for 3. But I think it's equally dangerous to be over complimentary of the good result, because that still tells the kid that you're focused on the result rather than the process. So I think that it's really helpful to compliment and focus on the way that they prepared for a game, the mental approach that they took to an at-bat, or the way that they approached a certain part in anything in life, school or baseball.
Jordan, anything you want to add? Because I've heard you say that too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Devin, you just said, and people say all the time, baseball, softball is a game of failure. If you succeed 1 in 3 times, you're a Hall of Famer. I think it's worse than that. I actually think that doesn't describe the problem or the challenge of baseball, softball, or life. Here's what does. Here's maybe a better take on this, and I wonder what you all think. What makes baseball and softball so challenging is that you cannot control the outcome. You can swing as hard as you want. You can hit a ball harder than you ever hit it in your entire life, and Sydney runs through a wall and catches it in center field like it was easy, and you go back to the dugout a failure by every measure. Everybody in the stands, he's out. The problem with the parent and sometimes the coach is, before you get up to bat, they say, go get a hit. Right. And you hit a ball 380 feet. Bobby's like, 380. I hit it 420, right? You hit a ball 380 feet, and Sydney catches it like it was nothing. If you were asked to get a hit, you failed. But instead, if you were asked for the process, go swing as hard as you can. Do what you've trained to do. Or easy enough. The one thing that you never hear anybody say that they should be saying all day long, go play. Go play, Devin. Right? Not go have fun. You can't command someone to have fun. Devin, go play. Sydney, go play. I mean, Sydney, I watched you for a decade. Go play. Every moment from the worst. And I saw you at a moment of the worst in a tournament, getting hurt in game 1. I saw the worst, yet somehow you found joy in that moment for your team. And I said, this is somebody who will succeed at everything, because not just because you picked yourself up at a tough time. Plenty of people are resilient. For you, it really was the process. I'm here, I'm on my team, and I'm going to do the best that I can all the time. It's not the outcome that matters. As hurt as you were, and the tears streamed down your face that day, Sydney, I remember it like it was yesterday. Not because you were hurt, but because you couldn't contribute the way you wanted to. And to me, that's what the game is about. That's the life lesson, and that's what parents need to instill is go play. Go do something you love and do it the best you can, and tell me how I can help, not by standing behind the backstop shouting instructions and telling you where to put your elbow because I heard somebody else say it, it actually has absolutely no bearing on reality, or ask you for an outcome that if you don't get the outcome, now suddenly you feel like a failure. So yes, I might have some thoughts on that topic.
All right. Sydney, do you want to add anything? Because I think that's a very hard concept for little kids to get, that you are going to fail most of the time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's actually, that was the same exact way I was going to answer that question about, a key lesson that I've learned on the field. I think what's, I was talking to a friend about this recently, but, in school, for example, you're kind of taught that if you put in the hours, if you study as hard as you possibly can, if you put in the hours working on that paper, you're almost guaranteed to do well. But in baseball and softball are really humbling sports in that no matter how hard you prepare, no matter how hard you practice, you're still guaranteed to fail. And I think that, and not only that, you're expected to go back to the dugout and almost pretend it never happened and get up to the plate the next at bat and, as if the previous at bat never happened. And I think that's a really, really hard lesson to learn. And I think a lot of kids struggle with that. I definitely struggled with that. I think that's a really important lesson that, you can carry into the rest of your life.
It's really well put. I'm going to ask you a question that I know most parents are going to be thinking, which is, how much did softball and baseball, I'm going to ask each of you briefly, how much did playing sports help you get into college? Because you know that we're trying to give our kids every opportunity to go to the college of their choice. And feel free to tell me if you were recruited directly. And even if you weren't, how much did that help build a very impressive resume? Bobby, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I was kind of in a position based on how kind of academically my high school went, I felt that from an academic perspective, applying early decision to Macalester was like almost the best academic outcome I probably may have gotten. And kind of within that tied to it, I was a very kind of low tier recruit to our school, but it was kind of just the process where baseball was definitely a part of it, but I definitely knew that I wanted to kind of be in a place where I was around people from all different backgrounds. And baseball was kind of like an added bonus, but I knew that I would have the chance to kind of continue playing. So that was a big kind of factor and had me decide because it was really important to me.
Great. Robert, how about you?
Yeah. So for me, playing baseball was definitely a key factor when I was looking at schools. I knew I wanted to play, and for me, that was a Division III level and kind of NESCAC conference. It didn't actually make a difference in terms of getting into Hamilton because I wasn't a recruit; I was a walk-on. So while I had conversations with the coaching staff and they looked at kind of my profile and kind of where I fit, they said, we think you'll get in, but we can't formally support you or anything there. One thing that was actually interesting to me is I was more of a recruit at Middlebury, applied early decision and was rejected. And so that experience to me kind of just at that point made me realize like you can't control everything. I thought I was confident I was going to get in. The coach told me he thought I was going to get in. And then on that December morning, I woke up to an email that was pretty brief and said, good luck pretty much. So I think for me, it was a factor in the decision, but didn't actually really impact.
But did you also talk about it in your interview, say, to show the discipline and the hard work that you've done and maintaining such great grades?
Yeah, I think without a doubt, especially kind of the coaching and the work that I did with Jordan and Empire was a key part of like my resume and extracurriculars and all of those things. So I think that was probably one of the most important things.
Okay. Devin, how about you? You're interesting because you took the gap year, and I'm just interested, did you use that for Dartmouth?
So much like Bobby and Robert, I actually wasn't directly impacted by baseball in terms of getting into school. I applied to a bunch of different schools, and after choosing Dartmouth, I applied to delay for a year. So it was after I was already in when I decided to take a gap year. Of course, like they said, the time management skills and the piece on a resume is very nice, but in a similar sense, it wasn't a key part of my resume or the direct college acceptance, but more the lessons that I took and applied in the classroom, I think helped guide me in applying and getting in.
So more the life lessons than the actual helping directly getting into a school.
Life lessons, and I'd say a big piece is time management skills.
Time management, right. Yeah. Sydney, I'm guessing your answer is different.
It is. I was recruited to Yale for softball, but at the same time, like, academics were always my number one priority. I didn't know I was going to get recruited to Yale until late in the summer before my senior year. So I knew that my grades and my SAT scores would be incredibly important. And even once you do get recruited, especially from an Ivy or a NESCAC school or an equivalent, high caliber school, your grades, even as an athlete, are really important. And the standard that they set for their recruited athletes are really high. So you can't, even if you are, an absolutely amazing stud softball or baseball player, you're not going to get in unless you have, those high grades and those high scores. So that was always a number one priority for me.
I'm going to share a little story, Sid, and I don't know if you remember this, but I know that your mother does. I was one of Sydney's trainers over the years, and anytime I was around the industry or colleges, I would always explore opportunities for Sydney because she was still young, and the recruiting process is a very, very rules-based process. You can't cross the line. And one day I'm out playing golf, and some woman is right next to me on a different hole. Sydney's smiling. I know she knows. And she's wearing a University of Hartford pullover. And, her ball's near mine. We start chatting. I said, listen, I think she saw New York Empire Baseball, and we start chatting. She said, wait, I've heard of you. You guys are in New York, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. She goes, do you have a softball program? I said, we don't have a softball program, but we do have an extraordinary softball player who's been extraordinary since she's this big and looking at a lot of colleges. She goes, here's my card. Please make the connection so that when, it's within the NCAA rules, I'd like to talk to her family, just to at least meet her, come see her play, maybe get her to a camp. And I get off the golf course, and I can't wait to call Paul and Nikki. And I say, Paul, Nikki, hop on the phone. Listen, the University of Hartford softball coach bumped into me playing golf today. They'd like to meet Sydney. And their answer, I got to be honest with you, this is an extremely humble family. Extremely. With a wonderful, wonderful resume. And they said, Jordan, we said Harvard, not Hartford. So at that moment, I knew that Sydney's focus, number one was academics, number two was softball. A close number two. But certainly number one was academics, because she would, let's be honest, a school, and it's a great school, and it's a great softball program. I'm guessing, Sid, there's a full ride in that school, but you'd rather go work harder and pay to be at Yale because of the academics and the future.
Definitely.
Hey, Jordan, I'm
4 years for
40.
40.
Oh, Sydney, did you want to add something? I'm sorry.
A slogan we like to say at Yale is 4 years for 40, meaning that you're signing up, you're only playing for 4 years, but it's a 40-year investment in that, having the degree from a school like Yale is going to, make an impact for 40 years to come.
So true. Those Yaleys, of course, they have that slogan. Jordan, I'm actually going to skip, and I want to ask you the question and then pose it to the panelists. But I hear this all the time as a mom standing on the sidelines, and I know kids also think about this, but how do you know if this is my sport? My kids ask me all the time, how do I know that baseball is my sport or tennis? And if it's not, should I be trying other sports at the same time?
So, it's interesting that you brought that to me, because I think most people are going to expect me to say, you should play baseball. And I'm going to start by answering this question very specific to Rob Berk. Rob came to me when he was 10 years old. He was a superstar on the chess team. And I could identify with that because I was a superstar on the math team. I wasn't a chess player. I wasn't smart enough. And I took my math team very seriously. I loved it, right? And I made sure that I had time for both. And one day Rob came to me and said, listen, I have a problem. The chess schedule is very stringent. It's going to get in the way of baseball. What should I do? And he was 10 years old, and we're having an adult conversation. I'll never forget it, Rob. And I said, Rob, and he was our starting catcher already 1 year in. He was good back then. I said, Rob, you should do whatever you want to do. Don't worry about me, and don't worry about baseball, and don't worry about anything. I want you to worry about yourself. I said, Rob, I love you already, and the team needs you, and the team loves you, but you need to be happy first. And that was the most important thing. And he ended up choosing baseball. And of course, his chess coach has never spoken to me since, even though we worked together, because he thinks that I was the reason that Rob didn't play chess that year. Besides that, to answer the question more directly, you have to be an athlete first. You have to be a student first, because the best athletes and the best students become the best student athletes, right? If you're a skilled baseball player at 10 and your focus hasn't been on sheer athleticism, you will not make it to the highest levels of whatever sport you choose. Carmelo Anthony once said to me that his first love remains baseball, and that he didn't pick up a basketball until sophomore year in high school because he was so tall, it was a no-brainer. But he loved baseball. The fact is, he was a terrific athlete and moved on from there. So the reality is, if you want to be a great athlete and a healthy athlete and a successful, skilled athlete later, the investment has to be made in becoming a wonderful, joyful, passionate athlete and healthy athlete early and forever, focusing on one sport. is the wrong answer. And everybody thinks 10,000 hours and all these other theories. 10,000 hours of athleticism that are then directed toward the sport of your choice. Particularly, I mean, I think about what Sydney said. Sid, I'll never forget what you said tonight. She said, I knew that I was doing the right thing because I wanted to miss the things that I missed. It wasn't that I was forced to or told to or made to. I chose to miss things that were of supreme importance because I had to go play softball. I loved it so much. So when you combine an investment in yourself and athleticism, well-rounded athleticism, trying everything you can possibly try, but then doing the things that you genuinely love, even when they're difficult, Devin, even when they're difficult, Rob, make you successful. Sydney, 4 for 40.
And before we open it to the panelists, I just want to press you on that, because to play devil's advocate, sometimes you hear parents say, and I can see it's true, well, if we do 2 sports, we're going to be worse at both. And there are other kids who are at the clubhouse all the time getting better. What would you say to that?
The reality is that it's so cross-specific. The agility that you, I mean, I'll be honest with you right now, and Rob will remember this. One of the best ball players we ever had, and consistently the best ball players we've had for a decade, are multi-sport athletes, particularly martial arts and hockey, right? They're not necessarily one-sided sports, right? If you tell me you play tennis in the winter and baseball in the spring, those are the same sport. And then I play golf in the summer. That's the same sport 3 times. Go do martial arts. It's a full body workout. Go play basketball, right? How many times I've said to Devin on day 7, do not do anything baseball related. Go do any sport you want. Go jump, or, go do jump rope. Go play basketball. Go run around, because the agility, the explosiveness, the movement, the strength, the mobility, those are all things that carry from sport to sport to sport. So while some sports are linear or vertical, basketball, you still require agility and movement and strength that lend themselves. I mean, I can only imagine, Sid, your explosiveness as a center fielder, your ability to react as quickly as you did. I mean, I was in awe watching you from a young age, but I can only imagine how much you were helped by the intensity of squash. And some people might say, oh, squash intense, huh? If you're serious about squash, it's very intense, and you need to be supremely focused all the time.
Sydney, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think it's incredibly important to play a lot of sports from a really young age. I always played a ton of sports. Squash was just one of them that I played in high school, but I played basketball, tennis, soccer, lacrosse for a little bit, all growing up. And I think it's really important, because each sport gives you a skill that all help you in some way when it comes to baseball or softball, whether you realize it or not.
But when did you have that gut feeling that softball was your thing?
Yeah, so I played competitive softball and squash when I was younger. And I ultimately realized that I loved the team aspect of softball, and squash didn't really have that. So while I loved the sport, I kind of realized that it wasn't really something I wanted to focus on as much as I wanted to with softball.
Devin, can we get your take on that, especially in reference to your back injury?
Yeah. So what specifically, when I decided to play baseball, or?
Yeah. Well, in terms of when did you realize that baseball was your sport? And also talk about, Jordan was saying that if you just play one thing, you're going to have injuries, and that's important too.
Yeah. So I knew baseball was my sport when kid pitch began. There was just something about pitching that has always spoken to me, and it combines the mental and physical aspects of competition in a way that I think no other role does. But at the same time, I continued to play multiple sports, football a little bit in middle school, soccer, basketball. And I agree 100% with Jordan that developing as an athlete is going to be the most beneficial in the long run. And then when I decided to focus on baseball in high school, I think that has some benefits. You get to spend more time in the gym. You do more exercises that are specific to baseball. And that I think is more and more beneficial the more and more physically developed that you are. When I began to focus on baseball in my junior year, I'm a little bit young for my grade and was also a little bit small. I think that the pressure and the time, and I wasn't letting myself rest. Like Jordan had been telling me, you got to give yourself time to recover. I don't think I was doing that in the right way. And I think that that's what led to my injury. So it's important to strike a balance, and then also to understand, once you've decided that it's something that you love, and once you've got the maturity to balance a schedule where you're focused so intensely on specific parts of the body, that's when it really makes sense to move over into more specific training.
Hey, Jordan, can I just ask you a question? When you say to do multiple sports, I can just hear parents saying, where's the time? And are you talking about to travel sports, or are you just saying in your spare time, hey, pick up something else?
So look, the reality is, I mean, it's funny because I think the word travel particularly, and Sid will jump on this all over this because she played baseball softball over the entire East Coast. So she saw what travel sports really look like outside of Manhattan. No knock. The word travel is the most misconceived word in youth sports in New York City, right? Because for most of New York, travel is something that you buy, right? Do you want travel or do you want rec ball? And everywhere else in the country, virtually, it's something that you have to earn. And we like to think that at Empire, that's the same thing, without a doubt, right? We'd rather have a team that's too small. So to answer the question, it doesn't have to be travel ball. It has to be athletics. It could even be that you go play with your friends. It could be that you go take Taekwondo lessons when you're not at baseball. It could be that it doesn't have to be that you compete at the highest level. That's not what it's about. It's not about the trophy. It's not about the accomplishment. I mean, Sid and this whole panel hit on it nonstop tonight. It's about the process. If you genuinely love something, go do it. It's that simple. I mean, and people make it so much more complicated than it needs to be. I need to schedule this because you have to be on this team. If those things are going to compete and become mutually exclusive where you can't do them both, you're losing out. And you asked Sydney something. I'm sorry to keep coming back to you, Sid. You asked Sydney, did you miss out? She said, no, I did not. I found time for the things that were important to me. And everyone on this panel said the same thing. I prioritized because I had this focus, because I had this focus on academics, because I had this need to play ball. I scheduled and had to be disciplined in my schedule to make sure that I had time. So the answer is no, you don't need to be on 4 travel teams, even though your neighbor is going to say, oh, your son's not on travel soccer. Well, if you're worried about the embarrassment of not being on a travel team in Manhattan, Sid, I'm going to take 4 for 40 a step further. I'm going to say, and people have heard me say this before, if that's embarrassing to somebody that their kid's not on a travel team, or that you yourself are not on a travel team, but you love a sport, are you willing to trade a few months of embarrassment for a lifetime of success? And if you're not, you're going to have some challenges along the way, and there's going to be a reality check in the future when you could really experience it now and say, wow, I've experienced the world, I'm doing things that I love, and they're all contributing to a journey that lies ahead of me, and will be more successful if I do just go engage and do the things that I love.
Good answer. Jordan, maybe you should look at some of the Q&As from the parents as I ask Robert and Bobby one more question. Just a hypothetical, Robert, I want you to take this. So you 4 happen to be amazing students, but not everyone is. And so I could see a hypothetical where a kid is pretty good at baseball, let's say, and not the best student. And they're saying, hey, if it didn't help get into college, if that's sort of what I'm doing, I enjoy it, but my grades are suffering because of all the time I spend playing baseball. Should I do it? Robert, you didn't play at Hamilton, but what would you say to that student who says, is it worth it?
That's a really good and tough question. Personally, I think that academics go further than athletics in a lot of ways. I think there are obviously certain, depends on the person, the individual, the circumstance, how good they are. For some people, athletics is a way to get to a better school than they could have ever gotten without them. But I think that if you're young and you still have the time to really focus on academics, that it'll go further than athletics will. So I think it's a tough conversation. I think that was one of my thoughts when I stepped away from the team my sophomore year. When I came back to Hamilton, I worked out the entire summer. I was at the arena every day, pretty much 7 days a week, the entire summer. I'd go to work, I'd bike to the arena, work out for 2 hours, bike home, go to the gym for 2 more hours, and I was ready to try out. Got back to school, and then realized that there are 168 hours in a week between what I wanted to do professionally with the companies and the work that I was starting then, what I wanted to do academically, and I wanted to make friends and enjoy college. Playing baseball, all that couldn't add up. And so that's when I decided to step away. I think it was a really tough decision, but I'm happy that I made that decision. So I think there does come a point where kind of everyone has that kind of thought process.
That calculation. Appreciate the honesty. And Bobby, what about your take?
Yeah, I would say, well, for one, I would say, I think as you kind of climb the levels and kind of going back to what we were talking about a bit earlier, in terms of like being versatile in many different ways. So on the field, playing multiple sports, there's only so many roster spots to actually fill, but like athletes are ones you can kind of sneak on to maybe a travel roster if you're athletic, or if you play most positions, you're automatically an advantage. The same thing is said for kind of in the classroom, I think, where, if sports is taking up too much of your time, then you have to reassess, one, how important is it to you? And two, how can we make it work in the backdrop of everything else going on, right? So if I'm in college and say I have a test the next day, but, we're out on the field on a Sunday in 38 degrees for 10 hours playing a doubleheader in, the middle of Minnesota, how do I make it work in a different, kind of situation so I'm able to do that? Because that's a privilege to do that. And whoever is a part of it, they want to do that. They want to be at the team lifts. They want to be, running 300-yard shuttles. They want to be standing in the cold for, 8 hours. Maybe they don't get in. And, that's kind of what the big picture is, kind of recognizing the big picture that, between the X's and O's, people don't really remember that. But, when you leave college, you kind of have the degree in your back pocket and, a lot of relationships that maybe you wouldn't have had beyond athletics. Kind of being a senior, kind of going to my seniors, I have very close friends that are 25 and 26 and also kind of 18. And I don't think those relationships would be as strong had it not be for the backdrop of athletics and being inspired by the hard work around you. So I think, being in a winning environment where it's not just baseball, but it's beyond that in the classroom, that's so important. And, physical activity, I think scientifically is proven, exercise is a great way to translate to the classroom. If you push yourself and your body to things you didn't realize, that's a great, kind of foundation to, hit school with the ground running. So, yeah.
That's a great answer.
So it's interesting that actually leads into, and we're filling up with a ton of questions. One of them that's come up from a number of different people, so I'm going to jump around a little bit. Touches on what Bobby just said, and Rob, I'm going to kick this to you. And I know we discussed it at the start a little bit. How did failure? How did you use failure that you experienced as motivation to work harder rather than being discouraged? And Rob, I know that you didn't know, but I'll let you share a story that I already know. You took failure. You walked away from baseball, something you love more than anything. You knew that you had a passion for business. And I'm not going to steal the thunder, but you published your first book on the day that you graduated college. And I'm going to guess, and it's not a guess, that you wouldn't have been able to do that had you continued to pursue something that you didn't love as much as the entrepreneurship. So how did you turn failure into success?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the biggest thing that I kind of realized through the failure and not making the baseball team, and that it was okay. And I put in the work that I was proud of the work I put in. I was proud of how many workouts I went to. I went to everything. I worked out the entire summer. I did the best I could, and that wasn't good enough to play on the Hamilton baseball team. And I definitely was really upset for a while, and kind of ate at me. And I realized like there's going to be something else that goes on. One of the kind of ironic things, and I think the way the world works, is that the same week that I was cut from the baseball team, my freshman year is when I started working professionally and kind of involved in entrepreneurship. And so for me, that experience, I wouldn't have been able to get as invested in my work. And I kind of viewed that as an opportunity, that now I had the time available that I could do other things. I could spend more time reading. I could work on a business plan. I could start a business, create a website, and see where it went. And I think also what I learned from that failure, a huge part of my identity at the time was baseball. And that's kind of all I really focused on. And I realized, like, I failed at that. I'm still here. I'm still kicking and screaming, and I'll be all right. And so I can go ahead and start a business, and maybe it'll fail, and then we'll be all right. We'll start something new. And I think that's kind of having something that was so essential to who I was throughout all my childhood and kind of growing up and into starting like my collegiate career. Was like, I mentioned it in the book, but I think it's like the best thing that happened to me at Hamilton was getting cut from the baseball team, because of how big of an impact it's had on who I've become and kind of the work I do now. So kind of trying to keep things big picture.
So it sounds cliche, but actually failing at something did teach you it's okay to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the fear of failure was holding me back more than anything else.
Yeah.
So there's one more question I want to get to. I know we're running out of time here, but it was addressed to Devin, but I'd like Sydney to share as well. What advice do you have? And the question is specifically to you, Devin, because it's a left-handed pitching high schooler, but I know it'll sort of resound with you, Sydney, as well. What advice, Devin, do you have for a left-handed pitcher in high school right now? He also wants to know, how did you go from 79 to 93? But Sydney, Devin, what advice do you have for the 8-year-old Sid, the 11-year-old, the 14-year-old Devin, the high school lefty? What advice do you have for those children? Because a lot of them are still on this call.
Yeah, so I think that there are two very, very important things when you want to put in the time and you want to put in the work to get to the next level or to get to your goals. The first thing is finding a plan. Finding a plan that you believe in, finding a plan that is encompasses exercises and mechanics and even eating, so that you're addressing everything that an athlete needs. And then the second thing, which I think is heavily tied to the first, is finding a coach or finding a method of improving that you believe in. And Jordan played a huge role, or played that role for me, to find someone who, and it's very important that this coach is not just invested in their own ideology, but is invested in getting better, and someone who you can talk to and ask questions, and really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, because a plan that is kind of out of your reach and that you're just following blindly isn't going to be as effective. So just to kind of summarize, find a coach who you believe in and who is going to explain why you're doing what you're doing. And that I think is the most important piece. And then with that coach, developing a plan that encompasses everything that you need to do to become a well-rounded athlete.
Jordan, I think you just got the ultimate compliment.
I can't even speak right now. So I'm Sydney, take it away, because I can't just sit here and weep tonight.
Sure. That's a really good question. And that's a tough question too, because I only remember what it was like to be 8 years old. And I think that's honestly a good thing that I don't remember what it was like, because when I was 8 years old, I wasn't worried about, whether I was going to be playing college softball or whether I was even going to be playing high school softball. I just played because I loved it. And I think that I was really lucky to have parents who never pushed me harder than I pushed myself. And I think that's really important. You play until you don't love it anymore. And if you don't love it, that's okay. You'll find something else that you love more. So I think my advice is just to play until you don't love it anymore, and just start to figure out what you love and what you don't, and you'll find what you're passionate about.
So true in life too, Sydney. So true.
So true. So to close, look, all of you, I mean, this panel is extraordinary. It really is. And I've been around some special people in my life, and I'm looking at this screen in awe. And because I'm physically, as I look at the screen, surrounded by the most exceptional people in so many ways. Your hearts are bigger than your talents, and that's saying quite a bit. what's next, right? I mean, nobody on this panel is even half my age. Rob, you've already published a book. Sid, you're already in banking. Bobby, you already have a resume that people twice your age would kill for, and they're all along the lines of your passion, and it's diverse. And Devin, if you feel like it, you're eventually headed to college. What's next? Sydney, what are we doing?
Yeah, so I don't even know if Jordan knows this, but I'm actually moving to San Francisco this summer. Yeah, I'll call you later about it, Jordan. But I'm working for a private equity firm in San Francisco starting this summer, and I'm really excited about it because I've never lived anywhere other than New York City or Connecticut for school. So it'll be a brand new experience, and I think I'm really excited for the new adventure. But I'm also really excited because a lot of my really close friends from my college team live there, and we decided we want to find some sort of adult softball league and start playing again, or maybe even find a little league nearby to coach together. So I'm really excited.
The last person that I know that left Wall Street and said, I think I'll go find a little league to coach.
Hey, I hear he's doing just fine.
If I'm surrounded by people like the five of you, yeah, I'm doing better than fine. Rob, I'd ask what's next, but I'm afraid to ask you what's next.
No, it's a really uncertain time to have just graduated from college with everything going on. But I'm really grateful to be kind of in the position where I am. I'm going to continue to grow. Apprentice so far, we're just about to turn a year old. We've matched over 20 entrepreneurs and college students, which is really exciting for me because the whole reason why I started this company is to give back to other college students and to kind of have other college students experience the same things that I experienced, finding a mentor, working throughout the school year, kind of doing more than what maybe they thought they could or what I thought I could. So I'm excited to kind of continue to grow Apprentice. Don't know if I'm going to write another book just yet, but at some point something, but let's see where it all goes. But I'm excited kind of for the future.
And really quick, Rob, I'm just curious because Sydney said that she plans to play softball. Could you see yourself picking up a bat?
I don't know if I could pick up a bat and play softball, but I do want to play basketball. I have a personal kind of like vendetta in a way against like some of the urban leagues of softball. Because at Hunter, we always played in Central Park and we would always get kicked off the field right at 6 o'clock when they had the permits, and the amount of fights that I would kind of get into with the adults who were like, we had like one more inning or like a half inning to get through. And they'd be like, no, it's our permit. We get the field. So out of like my experience with that and respect to the high school kids playing somewhere, I don't know if I could do it, but.
Love that answer.
Bobby, I honestly, every time I look up, your hands are in something so professional. You've been in journalism, politics, business, baseball. What's next, Bobby?
Yeah, so I only have a year left of kind of waking up, going to 2 classes, and then baseball practice, and then kind of hanging out with my friends after doing homework in the evening. So I'm definitely going to kind of embrace that and kind of realize that, the end is near. But really, I'm just kind of looking to, finish strong academically. I'm not totally sure what kind of career I'm going to go into, but just trying to embrace the liberal arts kind of school that I'm at, and then kind of within that I'm training for my second marathon, training with baseball, working out with my teammates, just kind of embracing the summer and making the best of the situation that we're all kind of in right now. So yeah.
So Bobby, it sounds like some people might read that as careless. I read it as fearless. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say fearless. I just kind of am not really scared of failure necessarily, because I think that, there's so much you can learn from kind of the background that I've had with school and athletics, and there's so much failure within that. But if you learn how to kind of react and adjust and kind of adapt to different situations that you're in, whether it's different social dynamics of a team, how your body has to be in a position to perform. I think that there's a lot of confidence you can kind of take from that. And it's definitely a confidence I didn't really have before college necessarily, but I think something that I've kind of developed into. So like I would say, if you have any chance to kind of, get the most out of what you have in, any capacity. And that's like what I've tried to do with baseball. That's what I've done with baseball and kind of athletics in general. So kind of just embracing your strengths and just going after it and working harder than everyone else.
It's fantastic. So, Superman, what's are you going to Dartmouth in a few months? What's next, Devin?
Yeah, so I'm starting college in the fall, and I'm super excited. I set out with the goal of pushing myself this year, trying to find a limit, pushing my limits in terms of my pursuit of baseball, giving 100% to it, and I still haven't found those limits. So I'm going to keep pushing and just see how far I can go. And then, I just feel so fortunate that I get to do that while receiving, just a grade A education. But yeah, I'm just going to keep pushing forward, see where baseball can take me.
Well, I'm going to say this in closing, and I haven't stopped thinking about it, not only in all the years that I've known all of you, and including you, Lisa. So many of you, all of you on this call were coaches, assistant coaches, mentors to other young players while you were with us. What you don't realize is that you didn't only have an impact on all of them. You had an impact on me. You had an impact on every coach at New York Empire Baseball. And whether you realize it yet or not, I realize you had an impact on every player at New York Empire, present, past, and future. Every child that ever walks through our doors will be inspired and influenced by you, whether or not they ever are lucky enough to meet you. Each and every one of you, Lisa, you included, will have impacted every child that ever walks through our doors. Thank you will never be enough. So have an amazing night. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for inspiring everyone around you, me included. Have an amazing night, and I look forward to seeing you in Sydney. I will talk to you in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Jordan.
Thanks,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a good night,
Oh,
everyone.
thank you.